Welcome to episode 37 of Rail Talk. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. And John, hate to see the loss on Saturday, but I think we confirmed I'm not bad luck because I wasn't there this time either. And you didn't get the trophy. I'm sorry, bud.
You didn't get the trophy. Jon Green, general manager of DJ Stable. I'm finally done licking my wounds. But Joe, as poorly as we finished in the three races that we ran in, how about a little homer for West Point Thoroughbreds stake winner down in Florida? So it was good to see you guys in the winner's circle down there, even if we were banned from existence.
I don't know how beautiful the people that we had were. They're all beautiful in my mind, but I don't know if they were beautiful enough for Belinda. But yeah, it was fun. It was a nice win. First off the layoff, first time US, great grade 2 performance. Joel Rosario was the best. That's all I got to say. Let's start the show. Rail Talk is sponsored by Fasig-Tipton. We are on the eve. We're recording this on Wednesday, April 3rd. We're on the eve of the April digital sale, which runs the 4th through the 9th. You've heard me talk up the digital sales before, but they really are a growing sector of the auction market, and Fasig-Tipton's at the forefront of it. It's super, super easy to enter and buy horses out of. And then the May digital sale follows that up, May 9th through the 14th. After that, the Mid-Atlantic 2-year-olds in training sale in Timonium, Maryland. The Undertax show is May 14th through the 16th, and then the sale will be that following Monday and Tuesday after the Preakness, May 20th through the 21st. Love those kind of sales that are in the thick, in the heat of Derby season, Preakness season, Triple Crown season. Gets all the buyers dreaming, and Fasig does a great job of promoting that sale. And then we'll have the June digital sale, May 30th through June 4th. Mid-Atlantic 2-year-olds in training on June 26th. And then we'll move into yearling season, starting with the July race selected of horses of racing age sale July 8th, then the July yearling sale July 9th, and a couple other digital sales. And then Saratoga, the cream of the crop, will be there. West Point will be there, well represented, August 5th and the 6th in Saratoga Springs. If you haven't been to that sale yet, you got to go. It's an event with plenty of action in the digital realm and on the sales grounds in the meantime at Fasig. So it was a big weekend of Derby preps. I got a Dubai World Cup card. Tink, our friend Tink / Tony is going to be back on the show in a little bit to break all that down. But in our neck of the woods, the most important result was in the Florida Derby. Hades was 5th in that race. We can ask John in a second about what the Derby plans are for him. But I just thought my takeaway from Fierceness running away to that huge win was that Johnny V kind of knew he screwed up in the Holy Bull. And I was saying this last week on a West Point podcast. I felt like if he could do it over, he would have just sent Fierceness to the lead and said, come and catch me. And instead, he got a little bit cute, thinking Hades was going to come back to him. And it didn't happen. Took no prisoners on Saturday, popped right out to the front from that 10 hole and just kept widening in the stretch. Obviously, in terms of pound for pound talent, Fierceness is the best 3-year-old in the country. Question becomes, does he need that perfect loose on the lead trip in order to show his best? So far, he's done that 3 times, and then 2 times when he didn't have things his own way, he kind of folded the tent. So that'll be the question on Derby Day. We'll have plenty of time to debate that because he's going to be a short price, assuming he makes it to the race. But John, just from a perspective of someone who was on the ground watching the race, what were your impressions?
Thanks, Joe. And it's amazing because I was watching the race, and as soon as going to the first turn, I turned to the person next to me and I was like, we're screwed, because not even so much that Fierceness got the lead by himself, but also the fact that we got kind of shut off and banged around a little bit. But that's racing. I mean, that's, you can't, for all the advantages that we got in the Holy Bull, it all came back kind of karma wise to bring it back to earth as far as where we were sitting in the Florida Derby. Thankfully, our horse is fine. He's sound. He's doing well. But to go back to Fierceness, I think that even going into the race, the common thought was Fierceness, pound for pound, is the best horse in the crop. There's no question. I mean, he runs off the charts when he gets everything his own way. He's the girl with the curl. When he's good, he's great, and when he's bad, he's horrid. And Johnny V, to his credit, did everything in his power to make sure that he broke from the 10 hole and went out there. I think there were a couple of scratches that helped them. Obviously their own horse, Bail Us Out, had some speed and they decided not to run. The other speed in the race, Seminole Chief, was definitely a runoff horse and could have pushed Fierceness out had he run, but he didn't. And that's the way the race played out. So tip of the cap to Fierceness. I actually tweeted out after the race, he showed today that he's a champion. That
very classy.
And I think it's right for racing. And the horse Fierceness, rightfully so, will be one of the favorites in the Derby. He'll certainly be the story because he's the 2-year-old champion and he's coming in. And there'll certainly be a lot of fanfare in there. I don't think he's going to get the lead as easily as he did in the Florida Derby, the same as we didn't get the lead as easily as we did in the Holy Bull. But that's why these races make so much, for me, have so much intrigue. Because you get to follow the horses and their stories, and I wouldn't bet against Fierceness in the Kentucky Derby. I still think that he's the best horse in the crop, but he needs to have it picture perfect, and it's tough with a 19 horse field to have things go absolutely picture perfect.
Yeah, the draw is going to be very important for him. And we'll have a sense after this coming weekend at the last big round of Derby preps, what the field shape is going to look like. We'll have a better sense of what the pace will be like because, that's going to be the question, whether or not he can bring his top effort, I think, whether or not he's able to get an unencumbered trip. There was another big Derby prep over the weekend, Muth winning the Arkansas Derby. I loved him in that race. I didn't really bet the race, but I thought he should have been favored over Timberlake just because he had the better speed in a race that didn't have much early foot. Just Steele ran big to be second. I don't know about you, but I didn't love a couple of the strides that he was taking in the stretch of that race. So I hope he's all right, but he worried me a little bit coming down the stretch running second to Muth. But obviously Muth can't run in the Derby unless something changes. But seems like there might be something that changes coming up before the Kentucky Derby because Amr Zidane, obviously the owner of Medina Spirit from the DQ a couple of years ago and several top Derby contenders like Muth and Maymoon, is going to sue or is suing Churchill Downs to get an injunction on the rule that Bob Baffert is not allowed to run horses at the Churchill meet, at the Kentucky Derby specifically, and hoping that is enough to get the protocol reversed and Baffert into the gate pending further legal action. I've seen these temporary injunctions work. I think back a lot to the Trump administration, all the horrible shit he would do. And then thankfully there would be a federal judge that would have an injunction and stop him from doing that kind of horrible shit. This is obviously much lower stakes, but I do think it from observation has a chance to work. Jon, as someone whose horse might be on the cusp points wise going into the Derby, you obviously have a vested interest in this, but as a quasi journalist, you also can just give us your take on from that side.
Yeah, I would say quasi is the most important word of that entire sentence, Joe. Absolutely.
I love quasi.
Quasi. Let's take Hades out of the equation and say that he's not going to have enough points to get in, so I can be a little less biased on this conversation. I don't think it's going to work. I thought it was interesting. Two things I thought were interesting. Number one is that Zidane actually is the only one who is named on the suit. None of Bob Baffert's other owners are named in the suit. Bob Baffert himself is not a party of this suit. So this is a rogue renegade going at it alone because he's got the money and the wherewithal to do it. If Muth didn't win the Arkansas Derby so impressively, would this have gone forward? I don't know. You got to ask Zidane about that. But I'll guarantee you that if the horse ran up the racetrack and a bad fifth, that this probably wouldn't have happened. I thought it was interesting that the three arguments that Zidane's attorney presented in the suit, and I'm going to read these so I don't screw it up, Joe. Number one is that the extension of Churchill Downs' ban is not grounded in any contractual or common law. Okay, it's a private entity, a private club, so they don't have to, but that's neither here nor there. It defies the authority of HISA. I don't know why that makes a difference. Whether or not their banning of a horse is in deference to the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority. And number three, it threatens the value of the Kentucky Derby. Well, that's the most asinine argument I think that you can make, because wouldn't Churchill Downs try to do everything in their power to increase the value of the Kentucky Derby?
The one thing they do very well.
Yeah, so exactly. So why would threatening the devaluation, why would they shoot themselves in the foot and devalue the Kentucky Derby by purposely holding out that horse? That out of all of them is the most nonsensical. But if that's your third best argument and that's nonsensical and the other two are kind of iffy, you're on very shaky ground. I think this is a desperation Hail Mary pass that they're trying to get done in order to get Muth in. One thing that they didn't stress in the argument that they made that I think was a better discussion point is that Zaydan did not buy any big ticket items, big ticket 2-year-olds that would be eligible for this year's Derby. So last year, he really did not buy any major expensive 2-year-olds. And I think that's the argument you can make is that, hey, this guy spent tens of millions of dollars on horseflesh with the idea of getting him into the Kentucky Derby in previous years. And because he knew that this year he was going to be eligible, he went back and bought and went back and reinvested. So I guess 2 years ago, he did not invest. I should rephrase it. 2 years ago, he did not invest. Last year, he plunked $11 million, give or take, on colts that would be eligible for this year's Derby. To me, that would be the argument is, look, for years and years, I spent millions of dollars. I stopped during the window that I knew my horses wouldn't be eligible because of my association with Bob Baffert. And now last year, I went back and spent $11 million on colts that would be eligible for the Kentucky Derby. I nominated them for the Kentucky Derby, and yet you still opted to not allow me to campaign them in the Kentucky Derby. That, to me, is your best argument. Again, I'm not an attorney, and I'm hardly a journalist.
Quasi. I just think, I think the argument that they really had no legal basis for continuing to exclude him makes a lot of sense. I agree that the other ones, like, I think him not being in the Derby devalues the Derby in that, in the court of public opinion, people might put an asterisk on this Derby if Bob has some of the best horses and they're not in the race. But in terms of the actual monetary value, you think people that had tickets to the Kentucky Derby 150 are canceling their tickets because Baffert's horse aren't going to be in there? You think that town still isn't going to be swarmed with tourists and revelers? Like, it's still going to be just as big of a party and just as big of a moneymaker for Churchill Downs as possible. I'm so tired of these stories, honestly. Like, I'm so looking forward to it being in the rear view, and Baffert, whatever you think about him, can compete in the Kentucky Derby just as readily as anybody else, barring future drug positives or embarrassment to the Derby, which is in the cards potentially. I wouldn't rule it out. Similarly, there was the final resolution of the 2018 Santa Anita Derby this week. So about 6 years in, we finally got the redistribution of the purse because, as we remember, Justify tested positive or had an overage for a substance in that race that he wasn't allowed to have that level for. And Bolt Doro ran second in that race. Mick Ruiz being a big stink about this, about getting Bolt Doro put up to first rather in the Santa Anita Derby. That finally happened. And big surprise, none of the bettors that needed Bolt Doro that day got a single cent out of this. I'm still really gets me a little crispy thinking about Medina Spirit and Mandaloon in the 2021 Derby and the amount of money I would have won. I was alive for like $7,000 in the pick 4 from Mandaloon in that race. And lo and behold, Mandaloon is the winner of the Kentucky Derby. Juddmonte cashed that check. Brad Cox got that check. And here I am still wanting desperately that 7,000 I should have had, but I'm not going to get it. That's the plight of the horse player. It's frustrating, like seeing these DQ results, knowing that on my end of the spectrum, on our end of the spectrum, the horse player end, it's never going to be made right.